All right. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Copilot Wave 3. So, a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today was announced at Ignite. I think it was about November-ish. And again, a lot of these things were starting to slowly trickle out. Some of them didn't show up until, just a couple weeks ago. So, this is kind of a recap of Wave 3 of Copilot, what has come out. Again, most of these things, if not all of these things, you should begin seeing today. They should all be out. Obviously, it's kind of the first quarter of 2026. So we'll be looking at new things that are starting to roll out actually right now. There's some legal ones and whatnot. So that will be kind of the next piece of this. But as of right now, these are the things, just so you're aware of these. A lot of folks that I meet with don't realize that these things are either available to them or anything about these, right? So that's kind of what this is just super high level, go over these, what they bring to the table, that type of thing. That's me. I am Michael Luttenberger. I'm a field CTO that covers all things AI. So obviously it's Copilot. So let's dive into Copilot. All right. First and foremost, again, there's been some buzz around this. It was initially discussed or launched or talked about, however you want to look at that, back, in November, but now it is out, right? And this is Agent 365. And what does this kind of solve? What is the point of this, right? Of this product. So one of the biggest problems we had when we were deploying agents is a few things. One, there was really no visibility into them, or the visibility you did have into them were kind of all over the place. Some will be in the tenant right under Copilot. Some might actually be in Copilot Studio, kind of when you're opening up the agents and looking at analytics and things like that. And then some of it was in the Power Platform admin center. So what this addresses is kind of bringing all of those things together, so you have a single pane of glass, or the control plane as or pane. I'm sorry, yeah, control plane as Microsoft calls it. So you have this visibility into all these things. But what does this mean, right? So it's this unified control plane, right, to manage Copilot agents across the whole organization. Again, like I said, one of the biggest issues was visibility, right, within there. And that's one piece of it, right, is being able to see where these things are, who's making them, what they're connected to, right? And that's the second piece of that, is kind of a central registry, if you will, for agents, right? Who built it, what what it does, right? What does this agent even do? And then what is the data it's touching, right? So these are things that you want to be aware of and even control those things. So this is going to help you kind of, as you say, the observe, govern, and secure, kind of the observe side of things is, right, gain visibility, see the agents in the environment, understand how they're used, act quickly, right, on performance or behavior or risk signals before they impact the business. You'll see all of these in the reportings that are in there. Kind of the governing piece is, establishing those guardrails for your agents, and the people, right? Onboard the agents with IT oversight, govern agent access to resources, right, and the data. So we don't necessarily want to turn on our agent or agents for every single piece of data in the tenant out there, or other connections right within there. So it's helping that piece out, and again, being ready to kind of audit those pieces and retention around that within there, and access controls within there, right? Monitoring and dashboards, and having the ability to shut down or modify a risky agent, all from there, right? Kind of that, again, that single kind of plane to see all of those things within there. And then kind of the secure pieces, secure agent identities, right? Each agent is kind of getting its own ID within there. So it's a little bit, more granular within how you want to control that. Control access to those resources, right? Prevent data oversharing, leaks, all those types of things. Again, defend against threats and vulnerabilities with, your data within there. Agent specific kind of threat protection and auditing that can help go in there, so that you have rogue kind of bots or agents in your environment. Work at Q, again, this was another one that was kind of announced, discussed a little bit high level, but now you're going to be seeing this right now. And how I like to say this is, a lot of people say that, isn't this just a graph? It sort of is, but what it is they've taken the graph, which is essentially raw data, right? Your emails, your calendar items, your documents you've created, kind of, you get the gist, right? Of the stuff that you're kind of working for. And what this does is puts basically AI layer over that to kind of make sense of what you have. So it's like kind of like AI talking to AI, if you will, within there. But it's kind of like the intelligence layer, if you will, of what you do day to day. Basically, Work IQ, understands what's happening in the organization right within there, um, within that piece. And again, looking at raw tools of that. Sometimes it didn't. Again, you may have experienced this yourself where um, maybe if it says you're looking for, give me emails and files and meetings around a certain topic, right? That maybe it didn't pull the exact one for you, right? Because it didn't really understand what you were necessarily asking for. And this is kind of putting that agentic kind of layer over it, right? As like I said, it's just kind of that gap fill, I would say, of things that just perhaps you were saying, well, maybe I'm getting too much, right? And that's kind of a thing we see with executive or leadership, right? That because they essentially have access to so many things, sometimes it's like, well, it's not finding all the relevant things, if you will, of what I'm looking for this project or this customer, that kind of idea. And that's where this steps in to fill that, right? That it's more or less context aware of what you're kind of asking it in more relevancy. Um, as Microsoft kind of says, it's the new AI brain, right, behind Copilot that basically kind of learns context and organizational, knowledge and behaviors and things like that. So again, still, analyzes your emails and files and chats, right, on that, plus your personal kind of work habits. And I would say that's kind of what, helps in here a little bit better memory on those types of things. And yeah, so it helps you, I would say make more sense out of your kind of sea of data, if you will. This one, I feel like this one kind of went under the radar slightly, and this is Copilot for Sales, Copilot for Service, and Copilot for Finance. So these were three separate SKUs, three separate kind of products, if you will. These were $50 a piece. Within there, again, you still got Copilot, but this was kind of like an add-on, if you will, SKU. It was its own SKU, but you still got the regular native M365 Copilot, but this also had integration into, in this case, it would be Copilot for Sales was, I think it was Salesforce and Dynamics. And again, please don't quote me on these. Service was ServiceNow and Zendesk. And then I don't recall what finance actually hooked into. But think of these as agents that were single purpose built, right? One of the issues, and again, this isn't a Copilot issue, this is kind of an AI issue in general. If you're using it this way, is when you have kind of these large language models and you're asking it perhaps very specific financing or sales thing, it has kind of a broad understanding of everything that you're doing, right? Not necessarily sales focused or finance focused. And what these agents are now, and again, these are now available to you for free. It's part of your M365 subscription, so no additional $50 or anything like that. These are part of it. Is now these are what I would consider like single purpose built agents that these agents understand sales or finance things, right? It doesn't go out there. So kind of if you go into Copilot, right, and kind of the example I always give is if you go and ask Copilot who is the whatever 15th president of the United States, it will know that because it's a large language model trained on all sorts of things. These aren't, they have no concept of that, right? It's very focused, laser focused around sales, again, services or finance within an organization. Again, this is, again, like I said, not an issue or a problem with Copilot. All the LLMs do that, right? You could go into a Claude or a ChatGPT and do the same thing. If you ask it very generalized questions, it will have those answers, but it might not be very narrow into what you're looking for. And that's where this comes and helps. And again, it's very minimal setup, right? To get this enabled in the environment and kind of wire it up to a Salesforce or Dynamics or ServiceNow. And then again, you could begin using that within that instance. App Builder, another one I feel kind of went under the radar slightly. What this is that again, Microsoft kind of capitalizing off of the term vibe coding, right? The idea behind vibe coding is that anybody in the organization can go ahead and create an app. Well, the problem with that is obviously we don't want just anybody creating an app. Where is it going? And again, probably the biggest issue with vibe coding today is where's the infrastructure for this, right? And what I mean by that is, cool, I can have AI create a beautiful front end of stuff, but what about the back end for one? Some of them make them, some of them don't. But even if it did make it, where are you going to host that database? Where are you going to host that piece, right? So there's kind of this gap in what the end user technically can do and really what's deliverable, and becomes kind of an IT nightmare, right? Of trying to do this stuff. So this is kind of Microsoft's answer to it. And what it is very much like the whole vibe coding concept is I can go in and say, hey, I need an application that will, you know, take customer, sentiment on whatever workshops or something like that. And I want to be able to put them in here and, kind of describe what you want to do with it, almost a dashboard. And then we'll go out and build that thing. Now, what's cool about this is it will build kind of that front end, right, app. Kind of this is kind of what you're looking at right now of the front end of this. But also what it does is that plumbing on the back end. And what it does is it actually creates lists, right? Microsoft lists are kind of your back end on these. And if you're doing data input or things like that, it's all doing it within there. So again, if you're using purview or retention policies or any of that fun stuff today, all the rules apply here because you're not kind of going out of your M365 instance. You're still having this application or agent that's kind of hosted there like all the other agents are today. And then you also have kind of a back end to that, again, with the list to be able to, run this application, if you will, all, again, visible where needed. So this is pretty cool. Agent mode. So again, if you have kind of, if you're using Excel or using Word and you're kind of noticing a little bit difference in kind of when you open up that Copilot menu, this is kind of the answer to it. So as I like to say is if you were ever using Excel like months ago and you were kind of like, it's not really doing all the things I want it to do, that was because it was using an older, basically ChatGPT model. As you can see, kind of some of those ChatGPT models are, towards the end there in accuracy or what it would do. Now it's gotten way better. And really what's behind it is it's using Anthropic's Claude for this piece of it. And again, it just I would say attacks kind of a spreadsheet a little bit different than ChatGPT did. Again, they're all LLMs, but they're all kind of trained slightly different on that. So as you can see kind of by the graph, but I would also argue if you see it for yourself, right, is kind of doing a side by side. If you were to use kind of the older Copilot with the ChatGPT and ask it to do things, and then ask that same thing with the newer agent mode, you would see kind of a night and day difference in what it produces for you. So this is good stuff, in my opinion. This really brings it to where I think most people were looking for it to act and function. Office Agent, so this is going to be available in your M365 Copilot chat experience, if you will. It's another, kind of agent in there, and you can just ask it from here. Because again, this was one of the issues that a lot of people were saying is, your ChatGPTs and your Claudes and your Geminis, when I go in there, I'm just using kind of a prompt box for everything. But with Copilot, you are actually, some stuff would be in the prompt box. Some stuff you would actually have to go open up like PowerPoint and do something in PowerPoint to make it do PowerPoint type of things, right? So this is kind of the unification of that. So now I still can do that, right? I can still go into PowerPoint, or I can go into Excel or Word and do stuff right there. Or I can, if I'm again kind of tied to the chat, where I like to work all day, perhaps in that chat, I can do it right here, right? Just ask it, hey, I need something, or presentation or something, and it will create it right there for you. So again, kind of a couple different ways of attacking, or different ways of utilizing the tech. And again, for me personally, this is what I like, right? I like kind of that single pane of glass, or that single kind of prompt box to go and do all said things and just kind of click through the different agents or integrations that I'm trying to use. So I personally like this. Claude. So this was again kind of talked about, and as of right now, it's kind of rolled out. I think 3-ish weeks ago, I think is kind of the Cowork piece of it. Also, you will see those models within there as your model selection, right, within the M365 Copilot experience. So you're going to see that as I have a screenshot here of Researcher, right, to where you're able to go in there and do that sort of thing. Where I could pick Claude or ChatGPT, or like I said, the Cowork piece of it, which is great, to kind of really getting to some of those full autonomy pieces where we'll do things automatically just by kind of telling it, or building a skill, right? That is the thing that happens in Cowork. You kind of tell your skill what you want to do, and it does those things. And this is actually trickled into SharePoint too, to where you can have skills in a SharePoint site to do things like scan documents for a certain word or whatnot, right? And those types of things, and have it do stuff like log log it into a list or whatever, right? There's lots of different things. And on the researcher side, one of the really cool things I think that is now out is what's called the model console. Um, what this does is you go ask it something and it will use basically ChatGPT to go ahead and get that kind of first draft, as I would like to say, or the first kind of run of whatever you're asking. And then what will happen is once it's done, then Claude will come over top and kind of check that. I've tried this with like some really obscure laws and stuff like that just to see how it would handle it. And it was really interesting because when it was kind of putting things out there, it would like have almost like a table, right, to where it was going, and it would leave some of the table blank because I guess it just didn't know, or it was, it didn't have that information. And it kind of went down and it built its thing, and then Claude comes over top and starts marking all these things like, ChatGPT didn't fill this in, so here's the real information. Or it said that this law is here, but I found this more recent link that says that this law is now this. So it was really interesting to go in there and kind of see that almost like you know, checking the other's work, if you will, and kind of verifying what things were accurate, what sources they both use. So this is, again, something I highly recommend that you look at. And again, that's definitely a compelling piece of Copilot, right? Is that now you kind of have two LLMs in there, right? You have ChatGPT and all the different versions. I believe it's up to 5.5 is in there right now at the time of talking right now. As of today, obviously it's going to change as new models come out. And again, you have the Anthropic models in there too. So you kind of have the best of both worlds, if you will, within there to kind of use which one makes sense. Because again, they're not all equal. So it's going to be an interesting partnership going forward. And again, this also trickles into, again, I'm showing things that are in the chat, but also if you're doing Copilot Studio agents, same thing here. Those have Claude now too, to where you can do that, again, part of the Frontier program. So if you have that toggled on essentially in your tenant, you'll be able to see these things immediately within there. So they're great things in my opinion. Audio overview. So Microsoft was going really kind of deep into this to where you can have audio overviews or summaries, if you will, of content, right? So kind of if we kind of go from graphics from left to bottom and up, on the left there, we have in a OneDrive, right? In my OneDrive where I can just select a document and have audio overview. So I'm not opening it up. I'm not telling it to do a summary, like just from selecting the document, not opening it, say, give me an audio overview, and it will do just that. Kind of in the center bottom there, we have our notebooks. So notebooks, again, have the ability to kind of all the things that are in your Copilot notebook to play audio overview of the things that are within there. Again, I have a lot of counterparts that say this is great for like commuting and things like that, right? So that you don't have to necessarily read the summary of these things, that you can get it kind of, audio perspective set out loud to you. And then on the right here, it looks like this is like perhaps, oh, I'm still in the chat, maybe here, maybe Word. I don't know where I took the screenshot from, but I can ask it, right? And you see here, generate a podcast from this document, right, within there. So it has that ability to do that too. So again, a couple different ways to go about that. I know that they're going to be giving some additional controls to that. I've already seen them. One of them is giving different kind of lengths or profiles, if you will, of folks. And like one was like executive, so it would give like a 4-minute overview of what the stuff was. Then one was more generic, and that was like 8 to 10 minutes of an overview of the stuff. And then the other was more like deep dive, where it's like 15 minutes. So again, these things are beginning to roll out. But again, kind of going deep into the audio overview with this, which again, if this is what you do or how you consume stuff, it's great for you right within there. Another one, right, is kind of this Copilot business plan, right, for small businesses. And basically, if your tenant is 300 or under, you can get the same Copilot as Enterprise, but for $21, per user versus the $30 a user, which is Enterprise, right, which is 301 and up. So again, no difference in features or capabilities or any of that fun stuff. It's all the same Copilot, just looking at it from a small business perspective, kind of a lower price point of entry within that. And just kind of the overview of everything I talked about, right? So just to kind of put a bow on this is, we talked about Work IQ right within there. And then obviously the big one is Agent 365 within there. And then again, expanding kind of Copilot within the Office apps with agent mode. Again, using kind of different models. And again, I would argue you would see different performance out of how those act um, today versus before this kind of piece came out. And then again, a lot of the audio things that we talked about, within the different workloads, right? Allowing you to create audio overviews of things within there. Again, I touched a little bit about, again, the Claude kind of partnership, bringing Claude into the mix here of Copilot. So you have multiple agents you can do for different things. I talked a little bit about, the SharePoint agent right within there where it can, generate pages. You have a list agent now that is new where you're, instead of going into Microsoft Lists and doing that, really like adding like a drop down. And again, if you've ever done that, right, where you've created a list and you wanted like a drop down to the 50 states, you were like sitting there typing in 50 states, or you're finding some list of them and copying and pasting, you could just tell Copilot that, right? Like this is a drop down for states and have in there all 50 states, and maybe you just want the 2-letter abbreviation or you want the whole thing, like tell it, it will build that. So again, very cool in my opinion. And again, there's some other Copilot kind of agent ask things in SharePoint, like archiving stale sites or adjusting access control things when you're asking it to and whatnot. So again, a lot of really cool things that were again kind of announced if you had just read them, saw them, heard them at Ignite in November. All of these things are out there now, right? Because again, those things were kind of slow trickling throughout the past few months, and now they're here. And that's kind of what the point of this kind of session was, is just to say, if you are unaware that these things were even discussed, right? They are here. They are now. And if you were, kind of here they are now, right? They're out now within here. And to that end, again, if you have any questions about these Wave 3 items, or really anything for that matter, just don't hesitate to reach out to us here, right? info@netrixglobal.com, and get in contact with myself or someone else on the team, and we can help you step through this, make sense of this, talk about this, whatnot, and help you with your journey through AI. And thank you, everybody, for your time today.